Well, hello investors and traders, I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap, where we take a look at these markets. We do it from a neoclassical perspective, each time asking ourselves what happened today, and what does it tell us about the coming ones. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday. It's broadcast at or for 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube. It's on the channel L.A. Little. Also do a show on Sundays. A broader look, take a big look at, more of the big picture on a Sunday. Adds a lot of perspective, so check it out if you have a chance. And of course, I always ask you, to tell a friend, tell two, because it's with you telling other folks that we can slowly grow this and make it worthwhile, not only for me but for you, as a result of me being able to give you better material. And if you do want to learn how to trade, that's what I do. I teach. I don't really just give you trades. I teach you how to trade using neoclassical. You can trade with me, or you can use the neoclassical tools if you're well versed already. As far as today, last night we talked about Draghi. We talked about that was going to be the story today. It was going to be the currencies. I also said that he was probably going to underdeliver, and boy, did he ever underdeliver. If we look at the dollar gets whacked down 2.38% today. The euro was up 3.5%. If I remember right. We'll see it here in a minute. Big moves. We got the commodities going up as we thought would be the case, but really not that much. And you had massive selling in the European markets. Also thought that would be the case if the euro popped. And then the wild card was our markets, and our markets gave it up as well, down about 1.5% to about 1.75%, depending on which one you're looking at. As far as tonight, and so looking at this dollar chart, so big move down, right? They slammed this thing lower. The euro and the yen higher. You can't really tell what's going on here on a daily. The volumes aren't there. You did have a breakout back here off this swing point high. It did test one time. That looks to be where the support is on this. And if you pull it over to a weekly chart, you get a better feel, right? We've talked about this before, and what you actually have here is you kind of have 2 ranges. You have the bottom range that goes to about somewhere in there, and then you got a top range up above it, something like that, right? So what is it doing? It's coming right in here to test into that range, try to get up underneath it. That's going to be a hard place to get under. The place I would key on if I'm looking at it is this bar here. That was a low spike high. That's going to be hard to get under. If we look at the price point on it, that's about 25.16. I would think that would be a good spot to think this thing's going to turn. Now, speaking of turning, turn your attention to the fact that the Fed more than likely is going to raise rates in 2 weeks. I think they've overdone it here in terms of how fast and how far they've moved this. It doesn't mean they can't move it farther, but don't expect this dollar to just crumble and go away. It's not going to happen with the divergent policies where the Fed is raising rates and the European Union is not doing any more QE, or at least not extending the QE in the way that people thought they would. That's the dollar. Let's look at the euro and the yen, because that was the other big piece of this, in particular the euro. So if we pull the euro up and take a look at it, here's that big spike over a swing point high. The more important thing is if you bring it over to the daily, what you're going to see here is, last night I was talking about how 9 out of 11 days it was down here wallowing around, couldn't get lower. Well, if you pull this over and look at it, this came right up to the top of the retest regenerate zone on the weekly, 106.93. That top there is 107.54 today, closes at 107.27. This is a weekly. Needs to close over that number to change the direction on the weekly, right, from a downtrend, right, to something that's sideways again. So my take here is tomorrow's a big day on the euro and what happens with the euro. If we get a big number out of the jobs and that says the Fed's going to raise, we may see the euro just come right back down. Not as far as it went today, but certainly come back down, and potentially that swing point lows high holds, and this thing is still within the downtrend view versus a sideways trend. The reason you use this neoclassical tell is because it gives you a heads up on what's happening, right? It's kind of a precursor, a pre-warning, if you will. So you can always measure where it was, and then you can see how it comes back and attacks that area, because if I'm a short seller, this is where I want to short sell it, right? That's the ideal spot. That's where I have to take the least amount of risk. And so if you're looking at it from that perspective and you're thinking about it like traders and institutional investors do, that's what you're looking at, and that's what you're thinking as part of the game. Looking at the yen over here, we got a big spike on it as well. It's coming back up. It's going to try to get into the gap. I expect this yen's going to get in the gap and come back up here and do the bearish retest regen off that swing point low. 79.81 is the number there. If we look at it on a weekly, this one has not been able to break down, and this one actually is already in a more or less a sideways trend. You know, it's been consolidating here for some period of time. You've gotten some lower lows, but now you've gotten a couple higher highs and a couple higher lows, right, which is kind of the classical view of what a trend change is. In the neoclassical world, you actually got the trend change here as you got over that swing point high. Neoclassical's algorithmic. It's not just, you know, kind of this or kind of that. You go 6 bars, you get over it, it tells you that you've broken and transitioned that trend or reaffirmed it, depending on what you've done. That's the currencies. Let's look at the indexes. Now, tonight's going to be a little bit longer because of all that happened today. And last night we talked about the wild card being the U.S. markets, not knowing how they'd react, but expecting Draghi to underdeliver. So it comes back into this high off this low, has more volume. If you go back over to here, though, this is the bar it's coming into. That was the bar on the way up. Let's point them out as we go here. So on the way up, we were pushing on this particular bar here. That's this bar. And so if you look at the volumes here, right, and the volumes there, it's a little bit less volume, almost the same, but just slightly less volume. So you're coming into it. Top of that bar is 2055. You actually close inside of it. So tomorrow the key is going to be can you get back over it? If you can't get back over it, you will try to reach the bottom. If you try to reach the bottom, that's going to be a retest regen again. It's going to be the third time. Odds on the third time are not that good. Something on the order of 42%. So that's the S&P 500. If we look at the NASDAQ in better shape, right? It's coming back into this bar. Volumes there is a little bit higher than the volume on the way back. So you come back into this gap up bar. Remember, that was Draghi delivering, I'm going to hit you with my best shot. And then it was the Amazon, Google, and Microsoft earnings that spiked that thing up. Well, you came back, you closed that gap. Now you pop back up, you make a new high off of this swing point. You fell at the top yesterday, which led us to think that we could get a pullback today. And now you're coming back down the other way. Now, if it does come back, it's going to be the second test into the bullish retest regen. Odds are still pretty good on the second test. And so that will be the key on that one as it comes back, if it gets that deep. NDX, it's going to look about the same, I think, almost exactly the same. And the Russell last night had the worst situation. You know, they all had bearish engulfings last night. The Russell does decent volume on the way back. 430, it's coming into this bar. It has 469, and into this bar, it's got 600 on it. So even though the Russell gets into those bars, it doesn't have the volume. The key tomorrow is going to be, do you get lower into those bars? That's really the key tomorrow, folks, everywhere. And that is does this market trade into these bars deeper? If it does, it will start to go after the bottoms of the bars. First bottom is here. It's not that far away from it. The next one is this bar here. And so as you can see, that's the support zone. Tonight, I was kind of looking here. I don't see that you're going to get a higher one. I think that's probably going to be it. And so, the Russell small caps, going to be a big tell tomorrow. And you've got the employment number tomorrow that will probably move these markets. If we look overseas, in particular, we look at Europe. Europe gets hammered. I don't have the volumes on the DAX, but I do have them on the CACs, and I can imagine the DAX was much heavier. Here's the way that chart shapes up. We thought it might pull back a little bit more today, and it did. Breaks under a swing point low. Oh, the volumes are in. So we get more volume, 1.5 coming back into 1.2. This is going to try to get deeper. It's going to try to trade to the bottom of this bar. That's about 10.587. Doesn't have to do it tomorrow. You can certainly get a bounce because you've already moved, a good piece in 3 bars. 11.3 down to what do we got here? 10.7, 10.8 roughly. So you've moved 500. That's a pretty good clip on the way down. Today you're down 3.5%. So that's the way that one shapes up. And if we look over at the CACs, we also had more volume. It also breaks a swing point low, and in fact it breaks 2. So that's going to put it in a bearish trend on this time frame. Coming back into this bar has more volume. This looks like it's going to reach the bottom of this one, 46.70. Let's see what the weekly looks. Yeah, so the bars they're going to try to come back into are the weeklies, 46, 86, 67, and let's go look at the DAX again on a weekly. And that bar there is deeper. I don't know if it'll get to it, but that would be the place, 10.382, or roughly 83. Okay, so tomorrow, the big thing tomorrow, of course, is going to be what the employment number comes out as. Yellen seemed to tip her hand tonight in her testimony in front of the Senate committee. She was basically saying 100,000 is all you need to replace, the jobs that are being created. So unless this number comes in really bad, I suspect the Fed is probably going to lift those rates in 2 weeks. I suspect that's going to put some strength back into the dollar. I tweeted this morning, and if you're not part of my tweet, you might want to go over to Twitter and sign up. It's LA Little, or actually I think it's TA Today. Yeah, it's TA Today. You can get it here on the front page. Just pop into here, and if I bring this over for you, you can pop into here and you can sign up and follow us. But I tweeted this morning that a push by Draghi or the move by Draghi was going to end up giving the Fed the ammunition that it needs to raise rates. So in other words, the dollar is not going to rocket off the top of the chart. And I think that was the big concern. And if the dollar's not going to do that, that means you can raise the rates. And I expect they probably had some sort of a plan to that effect. That's it for tonight. Have yourself a great one. Make some money tomorrow. I'll see you on Sunday. Tell a friend, tell two. As I say, I'm LA. This is, and it was, your daily NeoTA wrap. Have a great night. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Good night, folks.